All right. It's good to be here. Yet another Zcon. Uh, okay. I guess the point of view that I'm Zaki. Uh, I'm on the board of Bootstrap. I've been a participant in the ecosystem for basically a decade. And I'm gonna sort of lay out an argument here that I have made for across many different ecosystems that I contribute to, um, that I would say equally applies to the Zcash ecosystem. All right, so here's basically the uh, sort of core of the argument. Um, okay, so I just like picked this image kind of at random. But for like probably the last 10 years, um, this kind of ecosystem page has been the sort of indicator of, hey, like my blockchain project is doing well. Lots of different logos, lots of different teams. Just pick this thing at random. Um, and basically, this is like how, you indicated to the market um, uh, that you were building a system that, the blockchain protocol that you built had an ecosystem around it, was being adopted by the market, etc. Um, I think it's become pretty clear um, that basically blockchains fall into two categories. So there's blockchains that compete as technology platforms, and there's blockchains that compete as like cult assets. Um, so you have this, and you sort of have to pick um, uh, uh, which of these things that you are as an ecosystem, what space you're competing in. Um, and if you are competing as a technology platform, um, which, you know, currently it's not like Zcash is neither succeeding as a technology platform nor as a cult asset. Um, there's sort of two different roadmaps. I'm sort of assuming for the uh, purposes of this discussion that like the direction that people want to go is building a technology platform. Um, but there are arguments in favor of going the other direction. Certainly, based on market caps today, assets like Cardano and XRP, which are primarily cult assets and not technology platforms, are outperforming like all the technology platform assets. So there's an argument for going the other way, but let's leave that aside. Um, so okay, so like my basic experience has been, or like the challenge with when you're building a technology platform and you're like, hey, our goal is we like have all of these different logos and all of this stuff. Um, the technology platform concept basically has um like is basically a two-sided marketplace between asset issuers and asset users. Um, so what we've seen, and like this is an example from Cosmos about why this sort of many builder, multiple ecosystems builds a thing like construction ecosystem that like doesn't meet the needs of asset users and asset issuers. So Cosmos. So we built this thing. Um, or a company in the Cosmos ecosystem built this thing, go.skip.build. So Cosmos's like main contribution is we built a framework for building blockchains, which allowed people to issue assets. We built an interoperability framework called IBC that allowed those assets to interoperate with each other. Um, and then, we had this like, you can make another ecosystem map with like thousands of logos on it of different projects, ecosystems, team members in this like network of systems. But then, basically it was a thing that was like extremely hard to use. Um, so we built this thing that was like, or Skip built this thing that was you know, go from like any asset on any chain, sort of coordinated around the Cosmos ecosystem, integrating many building protocols. But then you have Jason, who is co-founder of Blockworks. You know, you may have seen like he seems to put out roughly 1,000 podcasts a week. Um, uh, Jason puts out this tweet this over the weekend. What's the best way to bridge Ethereum to Cosmos? It doesn't look like you have this like incredibly high context person um, who doesn't who's like the system isn't legible enough for him to like discover the core like the like user flow that will get him what he wants, which is he wants to interact with an asset in Cosmos, and he's having a terrible experience. And the product exists. Like if you look down here, like I tweeted go.skip.build at him, um, uh, and it like immediately solved this problem. But you can't onboard users. We aren't like the user flow on sort of both sides of this technology platform buildings. It's like completely illegible because, and like I will argue that the problem with this is um, the lack of vertical integration. So um, traditionally, we built the system as like we built blockchains as like a set of puzzle pieces. Um, so you have like some foundation, some entity, some core team, and they do a bunch of protocol R&D. Um, we the protocol R&D gets represented as a full node, as a piece of open source software, but there's in general like no user interface to this system. There's no solutions engineering team. There's no, hey, like how do we actually go out and solve a problem for like a specific partner. Generally all those things are missing, and but we have this like core protocol, and then the idea is that like a bunch of independent businesses get spun up. Um, and I would basically argue that like if across all of blockchain for the last decade, none of this has ever actually worked. Um, we've not really been able to like deliver complete solutions that users want. Um, the primary motivation, though, for doing this was regulatory. So the thesis of like, what was decentralization, what was adequate in a world where like no rules were being written in the United States, was that like, okay, well, if you do this sort of subtractive, fragmented, non-integrative approach, you have a strong argument for having a decentralized ecosystem. Um, but the regulatory landscape is changing. Um, the 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 election of the Trump administration, the beginning of the Trump administration, the work that Hester Pierce is doing at the SEC to actually write some rules for the United States. We will get to hopefully within this year an actual definition of what aspects of decentralization are important, and what aspects of decentralization should be delayed, ignored, in the favor of product market fit. So it kind of gets to this. So Jill has this tweet. This is the pinned tweet on the top of Jill's Twitter, which is the state of interop, which is really the state of Ethereum. We're all building the same product. So you know, I think in ecosystems that have lots and lots of teams, you are fine, like Ethereum, Solana, etc. You find yourself in this situation where the product, which I would define as what a user actually experiences, like what the user journey actually interacts with, like I want to do something in your ecosystem, um, is requires the core like requires touching many different teams, which have their own each have their own tokens, and uh, this gets you to this like sort of place where it's really hard to sort of sort of finally integrate all these pieces into a single product. There's lots of group chats and calls and coordination exercises, but each one is also trying to accrue value to their own token across this process. And it is an incredibly challenging environment to build in, and it's an incredibly challenging environment. And I think like one of the biggest things that I would take away from ETH Denver, from where blockchains are in 2025, is that we frankly all need to be building a much more compelling product that seems much more relevant to the user. We're competing in a very noisy environment. The attention space is being really occupied in the minds of ordinary consumers by AI, and we have to respond to that. So basically, the user journey is all one product. It's wallets, it's block explorers, it's core protocol features, it's the programming interfaces that people consume, especially asset issuers consume. It's on and off ramps, it's DeFi. This is all one product. Now, it's pretty clear that in today's blockchain world, this is an interaction between many different infrastructure providers to provide this product. But unification between the teams that are building significant portions of the stack makes everything else easier. You may, so like if you were to sort of take kind of where we are with Zcash as a protocol, you have the team at Electric Coin Company builds a lot of the core protocol features. They also have a team that's building a wallet. The programming interfaces are sort of split between Zcash Foundation and ECC. On and off ramps, we've seen some progress with integrating those into Zcash. And then Near has, through Near Intense, has brought DeFi at some significant scale to the Zcash ecosystem, probably like for the first time. But like all of these things are the product. Currently, the way the product is presented to the users, there's like significant frictions at various levels. And if any blockchain ecosystem is to survive, we have to like massively reduce these frictions. One of the problems that seems to like recur over and over again in the blockchain space is the perils of shallow exploration of the product space. One of the things that you see, I mean, you see this in Cosmos, you see this in Ethereum, you see this in Near, you see this in Solana as challenges. Though I would argue probably Solana is doing the best job of having avoided this, is the tendency of you spin up a bunch of teams through like a grant process with the idea of, hey, just like more is better and more will enable more parallel experiments. The challenge with the parallel experiment approach is that it actually tends to incentivize, especially if there's just sort of like a finite short-lived funding stream, there's a tendency to want to do a little bit of everything, kind of explore lots of things in like a fairly shallow way, without like really committing to like a single product vision, a single solution, a single thing that like makes that solves like a specific user problem, and instead kind of dabble in everything. And you sort of see um, so thank you for the questions to start coming in, but I'm gonna just do a couple more slides and then we'll get to sort of discussing the questions. So The benefits of deeper integration are uh, integrating products to create deeper, more complete user experiences. These experiences drive network effects and growth, decentralization. So the basic thesis is I'm really not advocating for like closing blockchains and turning them into Web2 platforms. What I'm more advocating for is investing in like pointed deep like in like a pointed deep uh 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 integration into uh like deep exploration, deep solutions, like deeply solving a single problem. um and to the extent that that extracts users, it that in sort of encourages a world in which someone was like, okay, someone has like deeply solved, built a sustainable business around like one thing using protocol features. I'm going to then start a new thing that deeply solves something uh that's like in a sufficiently distinct products cache stage. So like, trading versus payments or something like that. So that's sort of like the core argument for why deeper integration is warranted. Okay, so just gonna sort of read off a question and maybe discuss it. Okay, so would having a more vertically integrated stack in Zcash help the speed of development or slow it down? I think the answer is it, having clear integration between telling protocol engineers like, here is who I'm solving, like here is a distinct uh, uh, user journey that I'm solving a problem for. This is why we need XYZ protocol features. This is why we should prioritize this aspect of protocol development. I think the biggest thing that slows down development is a lack of clear prioritization. And, given that like, extremely finite resources, but like basically every ecosystem at every scale is uh, cannot prioritize everything. Um, and the ability to like sort of relentlessly prioritize things is a sort of huge edge when it comes to speeding up development. Um, so it looks like this approach. The next question is: it looks like this approach needs a central consensus to coordinate it. How do you see that happening with Zcash at the current state? Um, right now, Zcash, really doesn't have that many different actors in the ecosystem. Um, it's a relatively small ecosystem, sort of coordinating between like Shielded Labs, ECC, Zcash Foundation. Um, there's a relatively small number of wallets. There's just like it's a relatively small ecosystem. I think that the biggest opportunities are um like really core in like sort of but I think that the there has been a tendency in the Zcash ecosystem to want to have like side pocket bets. Um the like side bet, and this like sort of emerges out of like the like Zcash community grants, um etc. I think we've like done a lot of improvement in the governance of ECC. We've done a lot of improvement in the governance of the Zcash Foundation. I think that there's a lot more opportunities for tighter coordinations. Um, um, cool. Okay. Taking your argument, Zcash deeply solves on-chain privacy. What should it do instead? So on-chain privacy is there's sort of been this argument, hey, like privacy is a feature, not a product. I wouldn't necessarily kind of go that far. But the biggest challenge of Zcash right now is been that it solves privacy for a single asset. It solves privacy for ZEC. Um, and it's become pretty clear that the strongest use case um, for blockchains is asset creation, asset issuance, assets trading, asset transfer. Um, and so ZSAs and multi-asset shielded pools seem like the natural evolution of the on-chain privacy product to sort of meet the needs of the market. Um, but I think that there has been sort of um, you know a lot of missing questions, like what is the asset creation story? um, how do people create assets? um, how do people manage those assets in wallets? How do you leverage things like the DeFi ecosystem to enable like liquidity and trading for those assets? um, and so I think that like the question has been like really comes down to, you know, asset issuance is like a huge and relevant piece. It's probably the most important piece of the puzzle. And uh but it needs like a unified product experience. Any more questions? I think that's the same question again. I think this approach has, so the question is this something that is better to think about before launching, or does it still have benefits as it's implemented now? Um, I think that like taking a more unified product oriented experience basically can uh 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 can be implemented at any point in time in blockchain life cycles. Um, my general sense of the world is that basically no blockchains have product market fit today. Um, uh, we are in that sense. Well, yeah, I would only, the only blockchain that has product market fit today is Bitcoin. And it's not really product market fit as a blockchain; it's product market fit as an asset. Um, and then every other blockchain is in this like tech is either in this cult asset or tech platform war um, that is still emerging as a in terms of product market fit. Um, I think that the biggest argument is that I'm making here is to kind of have Zcash like really sort of start saying we're not as interested in taking our finite resources and allocating them towards like a portfolio of bets approach. Um, the portfolio of bets approach like really seems to work well for is like an approach that like works well for like individual asset allocator or a fund. um but products are not that. um Products um are user journeys and about creating like a compelling reason for a user to use a product and return and keep returning. um and it's a challenge to do all of this in blockchains. Like, I mean, it's just like an enormous struggle. And none of this is easy. But like the portfolio of bets approach um, probably is not something I would continue to advocate for in the ecosystem. Cool. Was that the last question? Ooh, one more. What do you think the ecosystem should work on that is not being worked on now? I think that the core, I don't think that the question, I don't know that the question is what isn't being worked on now. I think the question is, I would say that the current uh uh that the challenge with every community, with communities just in general, right, is um you have a bunch of typically traumatized token holders because of the price action. um you have a community that is um dissatisfied with progress so far. um and I think that the question is to sort of um understand people's desire and support the desire, not naively. Um, um, so, okay, cool. So support the desire for like a more unified product experience. Like it's on the builders to sort of define what those experiences are going to be. Okay, and so then the question is dominant asset is question is asset issuance and trading. Um, And the question is that forward looking or backward looking? So I think like one of the like honest answers is, as I've said, in my sense of the world is that very few like nothing in blockchain has product market fit truly today. Um, but it's probably worth, well, okay, I'll take that. Stable coins have product market fit. Stable coins have product market fit in blockchain. I also said Bitcoin. So those two things I will probably say have product market fit. Um, the and the problem with searching through this design space is like you need feedback from the market. And so I think that, hope my expectation is that we're going to see, or I'm broadly hopeful that we're going to see, you know, the embrace of things like social coordination, on-chain governance, um, credible commitments, all of these things. Um, but it seems like those things need to branch off of the core asset issuance, stablecoin, et cetera, use cases. I mean, I think this is very general, not really applicable, not just mostly a conversation about Zcash. Um, but this is like the reality is we kind of have to start where there is a market and engagement and users and sort of linearly iterate off of that. um I think like if you kind of compare it to like other technology cycles, like what building web pages was and social media was, asset issuances to blockchains. Thanks. Thank you. Goodbye.